Welcome to Sisters in Crime's Murder Monday, where authors talk about their crime craft. My name is Jacq. I'm a bibliophile, copywriter, podcaster, and member of Sisters in Crime Australia, where we've been celebrating women's crime writing since 1991. My guest on this month's Murder Monday is Tasmanian author Tansy Rayner Roberts and her alter ego, Livia Day. Hello, Tansy.
Hi, Jacq.
Tansy is known for her award-winning space opera, gaslamp fantasy, and fantasy fiction, including 8 novels, 9 short story collections, well over 100 short stories and novellas, as well as her podcasting. I need to take a bit of a breath there. But today we're talking to Tansy because she writes crime under her pen name Livia Day, and they're cozy, witty, and wickedly funny Tasmanian murder mysteries. Her 5 crime novels include A Trifle Dead, Died and Buried, and her most recent title, Drop Dead in Red, which features scones, murder, and baby goats. I tell you what, Tansy, it's a bit of a mouthful. What an achievement.
Thank you. You were totally going to say Drop Dead Gorgeous there, weren't you? It trips off the tongue.
Well, I wore red especially.
That is lovely. I appreciate it.
So the way that we do this is we've got a whole bunch of cards and we've given them a shuffle, and I ask you questions on your craft. Are you ready to go?
I am ready.
Alrighty. And the first one is, what triggers you to write on a particular theme?
Oh, that is a really interesting question. Usually it is because something floats past my eyeballs and just, sticks and I can't let go. Yeah, I don't know, if I keep thinking about it, if I keep turning it over, I do really like very visual themes, particularly with my crime fiction. I found that this is the only time I've actually stuck to things like doing a Pinterest board and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like actually having really strong visual ideas can often do it. But I do love a theme, and I love really drilling down into a theme, like not just surface theme, but sort of really sort of trying to pile it on. I
Right.
enjoy that aspect. So yeah, with my current books, it's all about secondhand fashion and clothes and how people interact with clothes, or their relationship with clothes. There's so much to dive into with that sort of thing. So yeah, I can turn anything into a theme. But usually it's because it's just latched on, which is one of those things you can't really explain or make logical sense of. It just happens, and then I'm obsessed.
That's awesome. Do you start with the plot or the character?
This is interesting. For me, it's character.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it might be, particularly once I've established the characters, it might be an idea of a plot that sort of sparks things off.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly I am a people first kind of writer. I don't love the plotting aspect, so I have to work a lot harder at it. So
Yeah.
character and setting is often the most important thing, and maybe just a little idea of a plot, and then I have to chase down the plot and make it work for the characters and not the other way around. So
What is your writing routine?
I don't really have any kind of sensible writing routine at all. Yeah, I tend to kind of look at trying to plan for what I'm going to get done in a month rather
Yeah.
than what I'm going to get done in a day. There's no single day that looks identical. A
Mm-hmm.
little bit more that I have more of a structured day job now. So my structured day job is 3 hours a day, in 2 parts. So I've got 2 hours in the morning and an hour
All
in the
right.
afternoon. It's not always exactly, but that's so basically I've got my 2 hours in the morning of the day job, and then the coming back to find out, what's exploded while I wasn't on, to tidy up at the end of the day. So that works. It
Yeah.
means I have effectively a very long lunch break. I have like a 3 hours in the middle of the day in which I can, if I'm sensible, pour some serious creative energy into that time without getting interrupted. If I'm actively writing, it also means I can do all my other stuff because, I publish myself. So I've got all these other hats I wear and all these other jobs I do. So I can usually do some useful things in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the day. But also I'm finding much though I really would like to get back to giving myself weekends, like as a long-term freelancer my whole life, my quest to give myself weekends continues. But right now I'm yeah. Right now I am finding I am just most creatively energized and can work really well with writing wise on the weekends. So I'll probably save my more creative draft writing for then if I can. And yeah, but that's partly because I've had a sweet spot of not having major weekend commitments as
Yeah.
much the last year or two. So yeah, it shifts. It shifts with what I've got to do for my kids, what I've got to do for my job, what I've got to do for my house renovations, which are taking up a lot of energy. But I'm a very scattered sort of person, so I do tend to work in small bursts.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Chaos is my superpower as well.
Yeah, yeah.
How,
So yes, there is no one working day that is perfect.
how much of you is in your characters?
Oh, that is a very interesting question. I mean, there's always a bit, and it's one of the things that I'm most conscious of as a writer is trying to make sure that so the hardest thing you do as a writer is trying to make sure that all your characters don't talk like you.
Yeah.
So that's usually something I try and save at the editing stage of like, oh, okay, let's, cut out these particular adverbs and make sure only at least one character uses them and not all of them. So yeah, there's a little bit of me in every character. Certainly there's a bit of things that are of interest to me in every character. I found that, yeah, there are some characters that I struggle to get back to as I get older. Like I'm wanting to write characters a little bit more, especially main characters, a little bit more connected to who I am now than who I was, when I started writing 25 years ago, is how long
Wow.
I've been published. So yeah, there are some characters that I was creating when I was younger that I don't particularly want to hang out with now. And
Yeah.
that's really more, it's much more characters I want to spend time with, which is often not people who are necessarily like me, but people who I find engaging. So, which makes it sound like there's a little bit of everybody I know in my characters, which is probably also true. Yeah, I don't know.
Do
My
you-
characters start feeling very like me. Sorry, you
oh
want
no,
to?
no, no, no. I'm just thinking, do you think you've got a character that you've allowed to be very much like you?
Oh, that's really interesting. I don't know that I have,
Not
largely because,
not yet?
yeah, I always have had a strong sense of separation of me from my writing. I guess there's like an ideal self.
Yeah.
And if it was, see, I'd have to go through my characters. No, it's ah, I don't think I do. No,
No.
I think some of my characters represent ideals of characters I would have liked to be like at some point in my life. Absolutely. But yeah, no, probably more with characters, and it doesn't actually relate to my crime fiction so much, but where I have a strong narrative voice, that's much more likely to be me, looking over my poor characters and, rolling my eyes at them for being ridiculous. So no, I don't think I have. I think I'm getting closer to a place in my life where I would have the confidence to do that,
Oh wow. Yeah.
to write a character that is more me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, as I get older, I think that's something that I could maybe feel myself moving towards,
Yeah.
but I've always written as a form of escape, I guess. And so, and a way of playing inside the heads of characters who aren't like me at all, which is quite refreshing and exciting.
Yeah.
But I feel, yeah, I feel as I get older, I am more able to find maybe something that's a little bit more biographical without becoming massively self-conscious, which as soon as I think about writing anything of anybody who is themselves like me, I feel very seen and
Yeah.
very looked at, and I want to hide under the furniture. So if I did, I might not let people read it.
Well, I suppose that's fair enough too, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many drafts do you do before you hand it to an editor?
Oh, okay. Somewhere between 3 and I guess 6.
Wow.
But I don't do separate drafts in the way a lot of people think of them.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely edit as I write, which is not
Oh,
always the most efficient way to go.
mm-hmm.
But if I get stuck, for instance, like, you know, if it's a day when I can't move forward creatively, I can't
Yeah.
put myself in that place, I'll often go back. So it's a little bit more like okay, this is going to sound terribly pretentious. It's a bit like a watercolor painting where, you know, you have all these layers,
Mm-hmm.
but like some of them go back and overlap over other layers, and then some are new colors and all that sort of thing. It's a bit like that. So my first chapter is always really, really heavily revised by the time I get to the end of what would technically be the first draft. Because I do go back and think about things and move things around.
Yeah.
Sometimes I try to charge ahead and say, just fix that later, depending on how fast I'm writing. And that's the other thing. I pick up speed towards the end of a book. So the later stuff probably isn't as well edited. But at the same time, I'm somebody who, if I can get into the right groove, my first drafts are actually pretty clean, a lot more than they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what comes out as my first draft is pretty solid. And that's partly just experience. And it's just how the words come out. Like sometimes the chapters which took the least effort to write are the ones that are nearly perfect as they are. And the ones that I agonize over are the ones that are still not right after 8 drafts of trying to fix them, which is incredibly frustrating. I am actually at my best as a writer when I'm writing super fast. I've got my momentum up, getting a lot of words done every day. It always never happens. If I get into that right groove,
yeah,
it comes out brilliantly, and it feels like third or fourth draft writing. But it's trying to get into that magical headspace is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And then, others have just been nibbled away at. And by the time I come back to it, I can't remember which bits, which bits took ages and which bits were very, very quick.
I see. Does your
Pure
main
chaos.
does your main character ever surprise you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think all my characters do. So my current main character of the Fashionably Late books, which we both have displayed on the shelf, Sam, she was an interesting character for me when I sort of put her together, because she was sort of a combination of anxieties and motivations, and then I started getting a sense of just somebody who's hit their 30s and has hit rock bottom and come back and is trying to make a good go of it, but also that sense, which I feel a lot of people, especially women, find when they get into their 30s and they realize that actually they feel like they wasted a lot of their 20s just like worrying about the wrong things or doing things, because that was how other people expected of them. And you just get to a point where you're just sort of a bit more comfortable in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I really enjoyed, like just spending time with her. But yes, she does surprise me a bit. She is different to some of my other protagonists, and how she responds to emergency situations, how she responds to surprises. I often don't know what she's going to do next. A little bit more. My original crime series, the Café La Femme books, Tabitha was much more a pure force of chaos.
Yep.
And she constantly surprised me, because she was just, 1 minute she would be, hyperventilating over a dead body in a surprising place, and the next minute she'd be dressed up in a ball gown going to a nightclub. So she kind of gave me whiplash. I'm a lot more comfortable with Sam. I feel like we'd get along pretty well.
Yeah.
But it means, it's something like she's the quiet ones who can surprise you. Because there's also the thing of realizing that you're not done yet in your 30s, that sense of like, I can still learn new things, I can still try new things, I can still get good at something that I didn't think I was good at before. That she is a character who's reinventing herself, and I always find that really, really interesting. There was a concept that there are a couple of authors who used to do a podcast, Jenny Cruzy and Lani Diane Rich, and they would talk about the concept of being towered. So this is from the Tower Tarot card.
Right, okay.
So the Tower is kind of destruction and rebirth. And they'll talk about how a lot of classic movies, a lot of classic stories, especially ones with a heroine, they start out with that person's life effectively being destroyed, and then the story is about the rebuilding. So like the first, not even the first act, but like the first scene or the beginning of it is just like total destruction. But there's something freeing in having your life totally destroyed. I think is again, like, not to be too essentialist, but again, for women who often have a lot of assumptions of what they'll be doing and who they'll be helping and who they'll be looking after and all that sort of thing, and just get to a point in your life where it's like everything's trashed, everything you thought you were working for is gone, start from scratch. And that's why I find her so interesting and keep coming back to her, because even though she's further along that path now, yeah, I think the story of somebody rebuilding their life is really compelling. And if they're doing it while solving mysteries, it's like, because, multitasking.
Exactly.
But I never actually, like, it was always, this was her backstory. This wasn't her. We didn't actually see her life ruined. We're just watching her, rebuild everything. And yeah, I find that. And it's keeping me interested so far.
That's always a good thing.
Absolutely.
What is your top writing tip?
Oh, I don't give yourself weekends.
Is that a matter of take my advice? I'm not using it.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you have time off. No, writing tip. It's a tricky one, because you ask something like that, instantly the brain goes blank.
Would you like to come back to it?
Yeah, maybe save that one. Put it aside. I'll come back to that one later.
I've got it
pass.
here. Yeah. What started you on a life of crime?
Oh, okay. Well, look, I've always read a lot of crime fiction. I started reading really early. I was reading novels at like 3 or 4, because I lived in the bush and I was an only child, and so my parents threw a lot of books at me, and then I just kept on. So I was reading mysteries even as a kid. It was all Trixie Belden and Enid Blyton and all those sort of things. Yeah. I always liked crime solving. I started watching The Bill at a very formative age.
Right.
And when I started reading adult novels, it was whatever my dad had on his shelf. And so there was a lot of, like, Dick Francis, who's still, I think, one of the great crime thriller plotters. Like, those books, they were always guaranteed good read, but also good character, really good character work all the way through. Especially because so many of them were starting from scratch with a new character. You had a few repeating characters, but it was often, this is a new character, this is their adventure, you're in it, first person, just really, really good stuff. The Robert B. Parker Spencer books, which for the most probably hard-boiled detective stuff I ever read. But again, it was a detective who knew how to throw a punch, but he also knew how to cook an omelette. You've got to...
They're very important balance.
That hero. So yeah, I loved crime fiction. And so because I was planning novels and writing novels at a very early age, I always meant to write crime. I actually drafted a book which very, very, very loosely could be seen to be the first draft of what became A Trifle Dead many years later. But I did that when I was at college, like grade 12, in a writing class. They told me I had to write something that was basically the length of a short story. And I was like, can it be a chapter from a novel? And they said yes. And so I wrote the novel.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I've got flags saying overachiever, going left, right, and center.
Yeah. I did a lot of typing in my teen years. So yeah, I always wanted to do that, but these books never quite found their home. There were a few kind of publishing almost stories, and then it didn't happen. And eventually they were picked up by a friend of mine who runs a publishing house in West Australia, 12th Planet Press, and she wanted to start an imprint of crime novels. And yeah, so the 3 Café La Femme books came out there, and it was lovely. So I launched Livia Day as a separate. I'd been writing science fiction fantasy for a long time at that point. I decided to have a separate name for the libraries, for the catalogs, for the online search. Although this was no, it wasn't before the days of online search. So yeah, I wanted to separate it out a bit. Because I think there are a lot of people who just love mysteries and they don't
Yes.
want to think about other kinds of books, and that's fine. Like, that's perfectly reasonable. But I knew I didn't want to do the kind of pen name where you don't tell people
Mm-hmm.
about it, because that
Yeah.
sounded really stressful. And it's proved right, because I always say my crime books are actually the ones with the really local appeal. They're all set in
Yeah.
Tasmania. Tasmanians really love them. So it's actually a bit confusing for them to not be the ones under my actual name. But
Yes.
this is where we are, you know. Yeah, so I love writing them, and I like writing stuff, yeah, in my own backyard. Humorous mysteries. I've always loved it, even though I hate the plotting aspect of a mystery. It
Yeah.
drives me up the wall. But I love it as a consumer, and so I always tell myself it's going to be amazing.
Well,
I mean, it would be easier to just read other people's books. Other people write really good murder mystery books, but I keep telling myself I can keep doing it, and so I do.
and the final question, Tansy, how would you get away with murder?
Well, I thought about this, and over the last few months, I've done an awful lot of disposing of rubbish from my house, or like, emptying
Yeah.
cupboards, emptying bookshelves. This is where, really, you and I know each other personally. I gave you like a lot of boxes of books to pass on
Yeah.
to your street library. And that got me thinking, like, how would one dispose of a body? Obviously, you need to put them in boxes. You need to put your body in boxes that nobody would want to open. So donating to like a street library and that sort of thing wouldn't really be very helpful, unless the label was something so deeply unappealing. Um, yeah, so
Yeah.
I haven't quite worked out the system, but definitely it would have to be some sort of label that makes it very clear that whatever is in the boxes is terribly boring and does not need to be looked at for some time, can be stored somewhere innocuous. And by the time anybody finds that there's something suspicious in those boxes, well, it's long enough ago that no one even remembers you were there.
Tansy, thank you so much for your time. Drop Dead in Red is the
Drop
latest
Dead in Red.
is the latest Livia Day. Where can people buy their copies if they can't get them at their local library?
They absolutely can get them at their local library. At least I hope they can. If not, they can definitely ask their librarian to get them in. They're in the system. Any bookshop can order them in. Otherwise, you can buy them online in just about any place, both as ebook and as paperback. So, yeah,
Lovely.
have at it.
Tansy, thank you for joining us today. Murder Monday interviews are available on Sisters in Crime YouTube channel from 6 p.m. once a month. On a Monday, we are joined by Tansy Rayner Roberts, also known as Livia Day, for this month's Murder Mondays.
Thanks for having me.